Look at this map. Do you see that blue monster? That is France, the most powerful war machine in Europa Universalis 5. And now look here at this small, almost invisible speck in the north. That is me, Flanders. But I am not an independent state. I am a vassal, and one of very many cogs in this great war machine that is this giant blue blood. The rules are simple. I give France my gold, I give my army, and in return I receive security. Because I no longer have to fear conquest. I've already been conquered. However, with each passing year, the noose tightens around my neck. One mistake, one failed attempt at resistance, and France will crush me quite literally with a single click. Gaining independence seems impossible, and attempting to fight looks like suicide. But I have a plan. I must find allies among the enemies of my French guardian. Convince the other cogs in the machine that only together can we resist. Turn the wealth of Flanders into steel. This will not be an ordinary campaign. This will be a fight for freedom against the greatest monster in Europe. Either I will win freedom and create a powerful Netherlands, or I will remain only a footnote in the history of French conquest. Welcome imperialists, Lucas here. Before I resume the gameplay, you need to briefly get to know my plan. Step 1 is diplomatic actions and fundraising. I need to secure allies and gold to pay for mercenaries, and that means expanding the economy. Step 2 is Judgment Day, a war with France for freedom. This is where it will be decided whether the episode ends after 10 minutes or lasts much longer. Step 3 is the fight for survival. A solitary Flanders is an easy target for the surrounding nations. Step 4 is the consolidation of the Netherlands. And now I will proceed to inspect the county. On the plus side, Flanders is definitely a very wealthy country, mainly thanks to two factors. It produces high-quality Flemish cloth, known all over the world, and the county of Flanders is inhabited by 500,000 people. Thanks to this, I have a powerful levy at my disposal. However, that's the end of the advantages. The ruler of Flanders, Count Louis, is an idiot who still views all the surrounding countries as enemies, which certainly won't make my diplomacy any easier. However, his son is a different story. There is hope that he will be a good ruler because he has natural administrative abilities. And I hope you remember that this is simply the best trait a ruler can have. That is why I moved him to my own court and began educating him in that direction. What's the point of Flanders earning a lot if a significant portion of that income is handed over to France? I'm basically like a turkey being fattened up for Thanksgiving. My county is also internally divided. Many values will now undergo passive changes due to the poor laws established here. What's the point of Flanders being a major producer of cloth if, in this tiny market, there is practically no wool? And because merchants have very limited trade capacity, I don't really have a way to acquire that wool, nor to later sell my produced cloth. The social estates aren't in a better state either. This idiot's authority is simply weak, and I will have to reduce it even further. Because I'm about to grant privileges and reform the country. I choose agrarian laws, which have undergone significant changes, as well as diplomatic traditions. Because without them, I won't achieve much with this country, and these laws will take 2 years to implement. But right now you already have the latest promotions on ENEBA. You don't have to wait to buy games cheaply. Detailed information about promotions and discount codes is in the description. To make them work, you need to use my link. Privileges. First, those for the peasants. Increased communalism, expansion of the peasant levy. But most importantly, the privilege of mobility, which now also allows peasants to expand RGOs. The burghers, treasury rights, that's always a good choice. Building rights, because I have major expansion ahead of me and I need cheap buildings. Increased trade capacity. The clergy, simple matter. A privilege to increase the number of clergy in cities. I have 2 cities, so this will positively affect the economy, as well as the privilege for strengthened faith. And yes, the nobility is definitely angry right now. So those slackers need to get something too. An elite court, a navy, and most importantly, feudal mercenaries. All estates are now satisfied, except me. So I make the idiot count the commander of that powerful navy. Feels better already. However, due to low legitimacy, I now face the threat of a coup. Therefore, I raise spending on my court to the maximum. Since an attempt on my ruler's life is quite an urgent matter, I also ordered my advisors to increase legitimacy. The second advisor will shift values toward free subjects, because Paradox has completely gutted serfdom to the point that it's simply not worth choosing. At least that's how it seems to me at the moment. I'm adding a short segment after recording this episode. During the beta, Paradox nerfed both of these values. They practically burned them to the ground, making both nearly useless. But whether this is their final form, we will only find out after the official release of patch 1.1. So I will no longer earn much from the hard labor of my peasants. That strategy is over. After focusing on free peasants, I will move on to capitalism, with a break to strengthen communalism during a plague. In research, I followed the standard path. First RGO development, then faster spread of institutions. The bonus, however, is additional diplomats. As rivals, I decided to choose very distant countries. As Flanders, I can also choose the language of the vassal oath. I will choose the language of the common folk to further strengthen free subjects. And now that you know how unfavorable the situation of my Flanders is, let's move on to executing step 1, building economic power and securing allies. At the start, I'm maximizing my spending on diplomacy, because if I'm being honest, at this moment diplomats are more valuable to me than soldiers. However, they will have to act at the right moment, so for now I'm holding them back. Your instinct tells you, spend that money on urban buildings because they generate the most income. Wrong! Take a look at this tiny Flemish market. It's lacking wood, stone and above all wool. Although, let's not forget about merchants, I needed them as well. These three raw materials and merchants are the bloodstream of the Flemish economy. Without them, this country will grind to a halt. That's why, for the burghers, the priority is a marketplace in both of my cities. At the same time, I'm expanding sawmills and mason works. I'm also changing the employment method in the sawmills so that the most profitable ones get priority. And here's the key trick. Since I don't have wool, I manually switch part of the production to plant fibers. I couldn't allow a lack of raw materials to halt production. A small digression here, bravo to Paradox. On the latest patch, even if you have automatic production methods enabled, the game remembers your manual choices. I just had to remember to click that barely visible little padlock. But either way, it's a major improvement. The clock has struck hour 0. England versus France, the 100 Years' War. For those two countries, it may be a tragedy. For my county, it's harvest time. It's a conflict between the country we owe loyalty to, France, and the country that provides us with wealth, England. What am I going to do? I'm fueling anti-French sentiment. Let English wool flow in a wide stream. Very cheap wool, and with it our desire for freedom. If I had remained loyal to France, England would have imposed an embargo and our industry would simply have collapsed. Instead, England is trying to pull me away from France by showering me with large amounts of gold. English money doesn't stink. I'm using it to secure the 3 key resources I mentioned at the beginning: pure profit. Since the 100 Years' War is underway, it's time to begin my diplomatic actions. First, I sent delegations to all the major powers in Europe. Most of these states are probably interested in preventing France's power from growing. The one country I'm not improving relations with is England, because France very quickly moves to real action within the framework of the 100 Years' War. And while those two countries are fighting, I must begin my own war and expansion. Just a bit different than you might expect, I improved legitimacy to a sufficient level to avoid any assassination attempts. So now my advisor can focus on diplomatic actions. And that allows me to begin my trade war with the colony for very valuable markets to sell my goods. That's why I'm improving relations with my neighbors, which will allow me to persuade them to gain preferential access to my market. And I had to win this trade war because their influence was growing. They had already taken over several key locations, which caused my market to shrink. The result? After a few years, a large number of new locations joined my market. Thanks to this, I increased the demand for high-quality cloth. I expanded my workshops myself. While merchants focused on importing cheap wool from abroad, I simply sold the cloth locally. My workshops were earning 9 times more than the competition. I practically monopolized this market. It's time for legal reforms in my county, a national assembly during which I will introduce 2 key changes. Switching the court to an itinerant one, which will grant me a proximity bonus and a free capital relocation upon the ruler's death. It's an investment in a certain future trick, mining rights for the commoners, to further increase peasant freedom. Ultimately, however, burgher law will be in force here. In this patch, Paradox also added a new law that reduces the cost of founding towns. A few years later, at another assembly, I introduced those 2 laws as well. Welcome to the Renaissance. I choose the administrative path. This will allow me to efficiently manage my county, which I plan to expand soon. Importantly, the new technological path is free. I'm taking the peasant levy and several army upgrades, and then I'll work on the standard increase in literacy across all social groups. It also seems to me that there have been some changes in technology and new ones were added. I honestly don't recognize this, but faster movement along roads means an increase in my authority, and apparently 2 new castles were added as well. Late year 45 marks the end of the first clash between France and England, the beginning of hospital expansion in my cities. But more importantly, I am a disloyal vassal and I'm proud of it. I am now establishing the Flemish independence movement, to which I will be able to invite several countries, and I begin with the greatest power, Castile. And suddenly, boom! France attacks Hainaut. Very clever. With one move, France shattered all my diplomatic efforts and my organization ceased to exist. However, that was not the end of my problems. The Black Death arrived quickly, after just a year, and I had to respond immediately by isolating the sick. I went into debt and built the missing hospital. This is also the best moment to change social values in Flanders, specifically toward communalism, which in the future will positively affect satisfaction in the country. Unfortunately, despite my efforts, the idiot count passes away. A new ruler. Well, let's just say he's no eagle. And what's worse? Yes, because what could be worse than the death of a ruler? The event that allows the capital to be relocated did not trigger. And now, is this a feature or a bug? And the situation grew even worse. The plague killed nearly 200,000 of my citizens. Yes, my levy was significantly reduced. The situation became truly critical when France conquered Holland. Damn, I'm surrounded. But this time, France overreached. A potential new coalition will be much stronger. Even France's vassals will want its downfall. I secure Burgundy and Brittany. Another 5 years later, I put 400 gold on the table and recruit elite heavy cavalry. The coalition of countries supporting my freedom is enormous. Together, they would field a large army. The only problem is that France is a giant. It is capable of crushing any of our armies individually. But I do not intend to strike individually. The allies are ready, English funds are flowing into the treasury again, replenishing it. Which means step 1 of the plan is complete. So the time has come to execute step 2, raise the banners and march to war against France. Before hell breaks loose, I need to prepare the cannon fodder, so I convene a national assembly. The goal? Increase the levy by 50% for 3 years. Why? Because as Flanders, I managed to secure a modifier that makes my levy 50% more effective in combat. I can field nearly 8,000 men who will fight almost like a professional army, and ignoring that would be a mistake. Additionally, I'll try to gain a bonus from conducting army drills. I also send out spies, lower the game speed, and only then do I call the banners of my allies. What? Why am I losing 10 stability points? France doesn't even like me that much anyway. Alright, but who cares? The war begins. As many as 71 countries stand on my side against 35 on the opposing side. For a local conflict, this is truly a massive war. And that doesn't mean it will be easy. For example, England has its own problems at the moment, so I'm not counting on them 100%. No matter, I call up the levy, lower expenditures, the money may come in handy for mercenaries. The war goal is simply the defense of my lands. Oh no! At this exact moment my ruler dies. Classic. I'm left with a female heir, a regent and a hopeless general. I'll have to make up for everything with tactics now. In the army, I place cavalry on the flanks. That's crucial for quickly crushing smaller armies with a larger force. To defeat smaller armies before they can consolidate into one large mass. Wow, that's incredibly effective. After several battles, I withdrew behind the line of forts on my own territory to replenish the cavalry. I purchase mounted mercenaries and wait, but look at the map. In the south, Castile is already entering the fray. We can see their troops on the march. The Kingdom of Aragon is only just mobilizing. From the east, I can already see the armies of Milan and Austria. Former French vassals have also joined the attack. But where is the Bohemia? The Bohemia is just standing there, why aren't they moving? Even the armies of Naples have already gone into battle. Ah, I love this! Meanwhile, I took the mercenaries, joined them with the main army and marched to occupy southern Holland. Because that's quite a tempting prize. And Castile has arrived. They have numerical superiority, so naturally they'll win those battles. However, winning battles isn't everything. Remember one thing, France and its vassals are a fortress upon a fortress, plus an extra fortress for good measure. And to make matters worse, fort garrisons are currently increased. While my allies are tying down the main French forces, fighting battles somewhere in central France or along the southern border, I decided to take a certain risk. My entire army marches straight into the heart of the beast. I'm going for Paris. And that's how the following months of this war pass. More battles, more forts under siege. The result? 19 battles 1 to 12. The French army is bleeding out, while my side still fields 120,000 troops. Only those reinforced garrisons are now standing in my way. But it wasn't enough to defeat me and my supporters. At this point, France is essentially already dead, so the question is, what will I carve out of it? Independence for sure, so I have that. Additionally, I take southern Holland for myself. Because it's fairly wealthy territory, I also liberate Artois and Hainaut to create additional buffers between myself and France. The war has been won, and even my faction did not suffer heavy losses. So yes, only now, after successfully completing step 2, does the harder part begin. Step 3, survival. Because I no longer have the French Guardian who, like it or not, used to protect me from other nearby countries. Instead, I have an enraged French blob that has only slightly shrunk. Because apart from me, it released every country that stood on my side in the War of Independence. Even so, France still has 20 times more population than I do, so the former French vassals will simply buy me time, because in reality, I am alone. Not a single country that supported my freedom is my ally, and worse still, countries like Castile don't even want to form an alliance with me. The dynasty on the Flemish throne changed to Durex? Seriously? Alright, my further plan is simple. To escape under the protective cloak of the Holy Roman Empire. It just so happens that the Bohemia, who like me, have their own emperor, and I will use these good relations to join the empire. I submit the request and... rejection. I am too wealthy. At first I tried to improve my relations with the emperor even more, by simply increasing trust, increasing my spending on the diplomatic corps, and by forming an alliance with the Bohemia, but it still wasn't enough. And this is where my big brain strategy comes into play. If I am too rich, then I must become poor. Initially I released a vassal from the newly conquered territory, but it still turned out to be insufficient. So now watch closely, I manually shut down all the most profitable enterprises, triggering a deliberate economic collapse. The system thinks, okay, Flanders is weak. Click and I'm in the empire. End of vacation, I reopen all the factories. And within a month, I am back to my previous level. So now, in theory, I am safe, because I am part of the Holy Roman Empire. And just in time, because the emperor has just died. And I have absolutely no idea who will now preside over the empire. However, I still have to watch out for things like antagonism. I have quite a lot of it with certain countries, and it will take about 10 years to decay. I also formed an alliance with Brittany. And my economy immediately felt that the French boot was lifted from our neck. I'm now earning over 20 gold. Time for further investments. I introduce a professional army, and now I need to develop the armory building. And better, heavily armored heavy cavalry as quickly as possible. In the current patch, cavalry is still overpowered. That's why I want higher quality cavalry, even in my levy. Now it's time for further expansions and upgrades. In practically all cities, I'm maxing out cloth workshops, and in cities and towns, marketplaces, and granaries, to accelerate population growth. Or a pirate fortress, which was supposed to give me 20 gold. In reality, it took 200 and stopped building. Ugh! England took Artois as a dominion, and I'm constructing temples and libraries in every city and town, as well as all other types of buildings that increase literacy. Because that directly boosts research, and that will allow me to acquire new technologies faster. And basically, step 3 is complete. I managed to secure 2 very strong allies and joined the Holy Roman Empire. As did many other countries, I have a fairly solid economy, so now step 4 lies ahead, the formation of the Netherlands. For this rather powerful form of government, I convene a national assembly. This time I'm not asking for money or for men, I'm asking for a target. Hainaut, why is this small piece of land my first objective? Because it contains gigantic iron deposits. Granted, there is some of this resource in the nearby area, but I won't be able to acquire those deposits anytime soon. Without cheap iron, I won't be able to produce the tools my craftsmen need to manufacture weapons for my armies. Besides, Mons also has coal, and if you have the right location, you can convert coal into iron. So I simply must conquer Hainaut. My enemies are small, but unfortunately also scattered. And while I defeat the armies of Hainaut and Liège without much trouble, I don't really have a way to reach those countries, but their armies can't reach me either. So I was able to split my forces and start occupying territory. The time I needed to capture those fortresses, I used to improve relations with France, which only after 2 more years sold me military access through its territory. So I set out to crush the last armies of my enemies. In essence, the war is won, but here's the catch. From most of these countries, I take only money, war reparations, and I humiliate them to gain prestige. For myself, I conquer only Hainaut. Unfortunately, my plan didn't fully succeed because I need 20 prestige points. and I have 18. I release Hainaut as my vassal, let them worry about administering those lands for now. I begin integrating Zealand. Unfortunately, conquests in this region generate a great deal of antagonism, so I start improving relations with all the smaller countries that are farther away from me, rather than waiting for antagonism to decay passively. In any case, the following years are a fairly long period of peace, so I use subsequent national assemblies for reforms, after which my laws look roughly like this. This allowed me to establish a fairly modern country with modern values, although there was still plenty of work to be done. Since I have secured iron supplies, it's time to build an armory, thanks to which I now have very large manpower reserves. I can afford 1,600 elite heavy cavalry. I also carry out a new governmental reform, introducing a modern banking system in Flanders. The economy and trade immediately feel the difference. This system simply makes trade even more profitable. And I need to earn more, because maintaining the new cavalry is truly expensive. 12 years have passed, and it's time to use my modern cavalry. The enemy forces are larger because unfortunately England is fighting on Brabant's side. But I have 1,600 cavalrymen and I march out to destroy Brabant. By the way, I'm not sure if this isn't some new casus belli you receive against your rivals. I have to admit, I was surprised at how large England's army is and at how poor it is. No matter, I position the cavalry on the flanks and march into battle. Trained peasantry plus cavalry allows me to very quickly destroy smaller enemy armies, and even if they had numerical superiority, cavalry at this stage of the game is absolutely overpowered, so I quickly wipe their armies. My war continues, but even better, France's war with England is also ongoing, which suits me perfectly. I just had to be careful that France did not occupy Brabant's territories. From time to time, France even helped in my war, and after crushing the English armies, all that remained was to besiege the fortresses. Meanwhile, a great deal of land was joining the empire. It worked. I finally gathered 28 prestige points. I go to the Emperor Bohemia and say, grant me the ducal title. If you look at it closely, the title of Count didn't give me much. But a duchy opens up a range of new diplomatic and other possibilities. Brabant fell, England is probably about to fall as well, I possess the required provinces, and I click Form the Netherlands. And I must admit, the Netherlands have quite a lot of military and trade developments that are truly worth my attention in a future campaign. But I know you want to see the name, which may not look overly epic, but still better than my Rome, the first episode of which you can watch here. And this is the complete full campaign.